Hi everyone, I'm Carl McLean, a senior combat designer working on elite specializations for End of Dragons. We're here today to preview some of the abilities for the upcoming Mesmer elite specialization, the Virtuoso. Let's jump right into it. To begin, let's briefly cover the profession mechanic changes. From the start, you will no longer have access to clones. Instead of creating clones, the Virtuoso will stock a blade on themselves for use with their blade song profession abilities. Phantasms will still initialize, but will stock a blade instead of creating a clone when they finish with their action. We'll have some brief demonstrations of different ways to gain blades during this preview. Now, let's go look at the Virtuoso's weapon, the dagger. The first skill for the Virtuoso's dagger is a consistent projectile attack called Flying Cutter. Instead of a payout of a 3 auto attack chain, any target struck by 3 of the projectiles it launches will receive multiple additional attacks on the third impact. The second skill of this weapon is Blade Call. This ability spreads daggers which pause at their ending point or wherever they collide with terrain, and then return to the Virtuoso for a second attack. If the blades strike an enemy during this ability, you'll stock a blade for your profession abilities. Here you can see a blade stocked above my character's left shoulder. Then stocking a second blade shows another above my right shoulder. Unstable Blade Storm is the third ability, dealing pulsing damage along its path and hurling blades at enemies within its reach. Okay, let's use some of these stocked blades we've accumulated. Blade Song Harmony is the Virtuoso's most accessible blade song, expending each stocked blade separately over a period of time that deals damage to your target enemy. Blade Song Sorrow. Each of your stocked blades readies itself, then launches toward your targeted enemy to strike them simultaneously, while inflicting confusion. We'll rebuild a few of our blades after this by switching to a greatsword, then using Mirror Blade and Phantasmal Berserker. Blade Song Dissonance. Combine all your blades into a single strike that dazes enemies. We'll regain a full set of blades by using the utility skill Blade Renewal. Blade Turn Requiem will block for a short time and deal damage to nearby enemies based on the number of blades stocked. Your heal skill is called Twin Blade Restoration, which throws daggers at enemies and grants bonus effects if you hit foes with them. As covered before, Blade Renewal will grant distortion and fully stock all blades that can be used differently for each of the blade songs. Rain of Blades drops daggers on foes for its duration, punishing enemies that remain in its area. Sword of Decimation is a single impact in an area to strategically immobilize enemies. Psychic Force is an area attack around the Virtuoso that pushes enemies away. And finally, 1000 Cuts as your elite skill is a fire and forget line-based damaging ability that requires foes to stay in its narrow path for full effectiveness. So there you have each of the abilities that the Virtuoso can harness for the expansion. We'll cover the traits another time. We're excited to see how the daggers fly when you get your hands on this burly elite specialization. I've been Carl McLean, and on behalf of ArenaNet and the Skills team, thank you, and we'll see you again soon.
What's going on, you guys? Bring your friends here. The Virtuoso was just released yesterday, and I figured I would give you guys a in-depth analysis of what I have to say on it so far. So I'm just going to go over everything just from left to right in this video, and then just give you my thoughts. So first we have Dagger 1, which is, let's see if I have it up, Flying Cutter. I'll have the tooltip and everything on the left-hand side of the screen, so you guys can just see it the entire time while I'm talking about it. Send a blade of energy at your target. Hitting the same target multiple times invokes a flurry of blades on your target. 1200 range pierces. Flurry damage at 3 times. It's pretty good so far. At 1200 range though, it is pretty crazy. So Blade Call, throw a fan of daggers that return to you, stock a blade if the attack hits at least one target. So just kind of regular ability, nothing too crazy. Although it's a 5-second cooldown, and you can essentially shotgun people depending on terrain, almost kind of the same way like Fiery Greatsword in a way. So if you have like somebody near a wall and you hit Bladefall, you actually might be able to get some decent shotgun damage out of that. And the cooldown is extremely short and it's instant. And pierces too. Although dagger's thrown 3, it does not hit 3 times, so you will not be able to basically make any type of Connie build with bleeds out of it. Obviously this is a power weapon, but I'm just spitballing off the top of my head while I'm going through this.
If the blades strike an enemy during this ability, you'll stock a blade for your professional.
And obviously, you no longer have clones, you have blades. You have a maximum of 5 instead of 3, which means that you theoretically could get more damage if it scales the same way, because obviously why would they have five blades instead of 3 illusions? So you could theoretically get more damage out of the Virtuoso as opposed to other builds, so that's something to look out for. Also, it's really good as well too because one, a lot of people complained about the visual clutter of Mesmer and clones, especially when there's more than one of them in, like, say, SPVP, for example. So one, it gets rid of the visual clutter. Two, you technically can't cleave the clones out, which is good and bad, just because cleaving the clones was a way to just kind of almost negate like a good majority of the damage that any Mesmer would deal before they have the opportunity to shatter. So, and also in World v World, I'm sure Mesmer would be played again because when you're fighting in huge Zergs, there's essentially no way to ramp up your damage because you don't have time. They just instantly get deleted. So.
Left shoulder. Then stocking a second blade shows another above my right shoulder. Unstable Blade Storm is the third ability.
I can't show the tooltip for Unstable Blade Storm because Carl's a genius and did not mouse over that ability. So I asked him if he would be able to get the tooltip for it. So he's getting back to me on that. So it's just an AoE. We don't know how many times it hits. Kind of sad that I can't really talk about it any more than that is. So the way shatters are, I'm kind of disappointed in the sense that they didn't really branch out to like F1 is damage, F2 is Condi, F3 is disable, and F4 is defensive. They kind of kept that like exact same layout. I was hoping that our class mechanic would be really altered with the Virtuoso, but they decided to keep the old faithful, unfortunately. I mean, it's not a bad thing, it's just kind of wanted something a little bit different. Also, another thing that should be, I think he mouses over it. So, every single shatter ability has a cast time, which is not a bad thing. It's just that, it's going to be... It's good and bad. So it's good that there's able to be counterplay on your shatter abilities. Also the fact that on every single one of these abilities that is showcased, like the F1 through F4, every single one of them does damage. Even diversion, even the defensive, even the heal does damage. Like every single ability on the Virtuoso does damage. So what it lacks in defense, because obviously, you know, it's not Mirage, so it's going to be pretty squish. And plus there's no distortion on F4. It makes up for in just sustained damage. Is the Virtuoso's most accessible blade song. So this is just the F1 Does decent damage. The animation is gorgeous. I think, what was the cast time on that? 3/4 second. That's a long cast. Damage versus inactivity. So he's running Dom for this.
Blade Song, most accessible Blade Song. Time that deals damage.
So Blade Song Sorrow, Vira Volley of Blades, inflicting your target with conditions. So it's just the cookie cutter confusion on Shatter, except with a half-second cast time, 25-second cooldown. Gives a blade, pierces, 1200 range, number of targets 5. It's going to be interesting seeing Mesmer deal damage from this far away. Like, all of our... I guess it's going to be a completely different playstyle. Like, maybe I am stressing too much about the cast times, but when you have 1200 range on something like that, it's not that big of a deal, but still something that should be considered. Although I don't really agree with because like dagger is like completely ranged in everything you do. The F1, the F2.
Readies itself just toward your target while inflicting confusion.
It's a cool animation too.
A few of our blades after this by switching to a greatsword, then using mirror blade and fantastic.
So seeing this, like, he's still getting blades from casting GS2 and Berserker, which leads me to believe that anything that you spec into on Mesmer that would give clones would also give blades. So at least they fought that far ahead in terms of not having any synergy with the rest of your skills, so that's good to see.
Blade Song Dissonance.
Combine all your blades in one blade that dazes targets based on the number of blades consumed. 1200 range, again, half-second daze per blade, so you can get up to a 2.5-second daze with full blades. Decent damage too, so it does damage and it does a decent daze, and it gives a blade.
All your blades into a single strike that dazes enemies. We'll regain a full set of blades by using the utility.
Oh, it actually doesn't give a blade. Okay, that was my mistake.
Using the utility skill Blade Renewal. We'll regain a full set of blades.
So Blade Renewal is essentially the Mesmer's version of Renewed Focus on guard, except it just gives 3 seconds of distortion and gives you full blades. 3-second channel, 60-second cooldown. So this is like an upgraded version of Mirror Images from Mesmer, except with a 3-second channel distortion. I wouldn't necessarily say it's an upgrade, because with Mirror Images, you just pop it and instantly shatter. I guess it's good in the fact that with Mirror Images, it was pretty unbalanced, just because of the fact that you can hit Mirror Images and then there was really no tell. Like, by the time the clones actually came up, it was too late. You've already shattered for like half their health and they're just jigga dead. So with Blade Renewal, at least there's, a long window of, hey, I'm getting all my blades back. I'm going to burst you into oblivion. So there's a fair amount of counterplay. If you can't tell that you're going to get bursted in 3 seconds with Blade Renewal with a, an obvious tell, then you deserve to get blasted. I'm actually kind of curious if people are going to run Mimic with Blade Renewal. Like Mimic, be 3 seconds of distortion, it would be double max blades. Probably be pretty good for burst.
By using the utility skill Blade Renewal. Blade Turn Requiem will block for a short time.
So when it comes to Blade Turn Requiem, blocking coming attacks and send your blade spinning around you to hit nearby foes. Spinning blade duration scales with number of blades consumed. I wish, like, every single one of our shatters so far has been completely just max 1200 range, right? Like 1200 range, like all of it has been 1200 range, and then the F4 is just like this 3-second block. It's a 3-second block duration, 1.5-second cast, and then it just does damage. Spinning blade duration scales with number of blades consumed. So this is kind of concerning to the point that, like, obviously we go from distortion to a 3-second block. Although when it comes to the damage, it's like you design the entire class, at least so far, when it comes to damage, and then you have like a block that's like within a radius of 240. So I don't know how often you're actually going to get the damage out of Blade Turn Requiem, but yeah, it's pretty interesting though. And the animation looks gorgeous. So Twin Blade Restoration, heal yourself and throw 2 blades at your target. If the first blade hits, you lose conditions. If the second blade hits, you gain Aegis and 1 additional random boon. So you only gain one, you only have 1 condition removed. I hate when it says lose conditions, lose a condition. But the healing's pretty decent. Don't really care too much about the Aegis. The Vigor's nice, the Swiftness nice. But it does damage. A healing ability that does damage. It's like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Restoration, which throws daggers at enemies and grants bonus effects.
And it's 1200 range. All this is 1200 range.
As covered before, Blade Renewal will grant distortion and fully stock all blades that can be used differently for each of the Blade songs. Rain of Blades drops daggers on foes for its duration, punishing enemies. Drops daggers.
So Rain of Swords, create a storm of blades that attacks a large area, damaging and applying vulnerability to targets. Damage 923, number of targets 5, pulse is 5, interval 1 second, radius 240, range 1200.
Punishing enemies that remain in its area.
The animation looks gorgeous.
Sword of Decimation is a single.
I mean, nothing too crazy about Rain of Swords. Does decent damage, just an AoE that does damage. So,
Enemies that remain in its.
What was the cooldown on that? 25-second cooldown. It's actually not bad. 3/4 second.
Duration, punishing enemies that remain in its area. Sword of Decimation is a single impact.
Drop a massive blade on a location, immobilizing enemies. 4-second immob. This attack deals increased damage against controlled and downed foes. Does good damage. 100% increased damage. Number of targets 5. Sword of Decimation, I'd imagine, would get some play. 25-second cooldown, half-second cast. Range 1200.
An area to strategically immobilize enemies.
Like literally a 4-second AoE immob. That is a Is that a half-second cast? Yeah, half-second cast. That's pretty big, actually. And it does decent damage. I mean, obviously, all the damage that Carl is showing here is just completely skewed. Like, I'm thinking in terms of like SPVP, it's probably going to be a little bit less damage, I'd imagine. This one he doesn't show the tooltip for, sadly.
Psychic Force is an area attack around the Virtuoso that pushes enemies away.
It looks like a half-second or 3/4 second cast.
Psychic Force is an area
with a 45-second cooldown. I don't really like this skill just because it reminds me of like Decap Ranger, or before it was viable. I'm not sure if it's viable anymore, but
attack around the Virtuoso
yeah.
that pushes enemies away.
Not sure how much. Like, I'm not sure what Mesmer is going to be, or what they want Mesmer to be in this so far. 1,000 cuts. Open a portal that devastates targets in a line in front of you with a flurry of blades. So damage 6 times, Giga damage, number of targets 5, duration 3, interval half second, pierces.
As your elite skill is a fire and forget line-based damage.
So fire and forget, he's just standing there, by the way, so he can cast that and just go off and do other things. So what you can really do is like, Focus 4 is going to be really important for 1,000 cuts, or any type of a mob before you cast this to guarantee the damage. Does really good damage. So a few things to go over. One, and probably the most important that I failed to mention so far is that obviously when you have no blades active, you cannot use your class mechanic. They tried this with Chronomancer, And obviously, when they changed Illusionary Persona, the class was literally unplayable for over a year until they finally changed it back. So I'm not really sure why they are going with the option to not uh, making it to where you're not able to use your class mechanic unless you have blades in this instance. You would think they would have learned their lesson with Chrono, but I hope, because if that's the case, like, one, I don't know the specialization tree, so it's kind of hard to speculate whether or not that's actually going to be balanced and playable when it hits. But I mean, overall, everything looks good so far. Everything has counterplay. You have cast times on all your shatters. All your shatters do damage. Your heal does damage. Everything is ranged. Everything is 1200 range, F1 through F4. The 1, 2, and 3 are ranged. Your heal is 1200 range. You have a AoE knockback. You have a half second AoE mob that's 4 seconds long. You have good damage on your elite. It should be interesting to see the specialization talent tree to see what uh, what you can kind of cook up from there. But yeah, I mean, overall, I really like it. I really like the your clones can't be cleaved out anymore. There's still good counterplay on the character in terms of your blades of when the actual burst is coming. So that's obviously really good to see. I didn't really expect them to just throw damage into everything, and I didn't expect them to throw cast times on your class abilities as well. It should be interesting to see how it plays out. In terms of how Mesmer is going to be utilized, I think it might be like I was talking to Zeromus the other day about it, and we were thinking it might be a like a side noter in some cases, but it has so much range. You can essentially be like a team fighter as well and just kind of stay back out of harm's way. I'm assuming that's why they're giving us so much range because from what we're seeing so far, Mesmer does not have a lot of defensive capability whatsoever. Like our F4's been reduced to a block, and then we have a 3-second channel distortion to, you know, get yourself some blades back. So other than that, there's not really too much in terms of being able to, you know, sustain damage. So, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy. What do you guys think? Comment below, let me know, and hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like, share with your friends, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.